Happy to talk to the next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. We have some similarities when it comes to SGC grading. We're definitely going to get into that tonight, but we're going to talk about chop up some hobby, kind of where he got his start and that sort of thing. But we're joined by Brandon Edwards of Bobbles Ballcards. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Glad you invited me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Um, for you, kind of where did the hobby all start for you? I know it's for a lot of us it's a similar story, but anytime the first time on the show, I always kind of start with that question.
So it's your normal, like you said, kind of a similar story. A lot of people like to joke around because of the gray beard and everything, and I just got used to it and play along. But I was born in '80. I got into the hobby right around '86. Um, I was big into sports. We as kids, and then back then we'd go outside. I lived in a neighborhood. We were, after getting off the school bus, we were outside playing basketball, baseball, whatever, whatever we could find, and just got into playing sports, which then led to watching. And back then we didn't have the internet and all that stuff, but we had the newspapers and the box scores and all of that good stuff. So um, friends in school, taking the binders in the backpack, or wearing the coats with the pockets on the inside and stuffing your top loaders as full as you could get them, and trading and selling, buying, and all that stuff. So kind of your normal. You've heard it probably a million times by now. Yeah, it all started when I was a wee little lad.
Now, did you have a period? For me, I was seven. I've told the story many times, and I'm not gonna. But did you have a period where you kind of got out and came back, or did you? Are you one of the few that kind of stuck with it the whole way?
So I I've actually I this is my third iteration of building a collection. Um, so around 96, I believe it was, um, at that point I was 16. I was a junior in high school, I believe, because I graduated when I was 17. But Magic the Gathering became popular. And a lot of my friends that were trading sports cards and stuff with, they were starting to show interest in that. And of course, you didn't want to be the lone wolf, and it's kind of hard to trade when your friends aren't doing sports. So I actually had traded part of my collection then for Magic cards, and so we could play. We weren't really collecting them; we were more building decks and playing in the cafeteria and stuff. And so at that point, that's kind of I didn't buy as much sports cards, but also obviously I graduated. I went to college right like 2 weeks after I graduated. I started business school. Um, and then in 1999, I moved out to Indiana. I became a father in 2000. So obviously, you can do the math there. I was 20 years old, new father. So there was a lot of other important things on the table. But I did pick back up in around '02, and I remember distinctly because um, I was buying Topps Finest Basketball, trying to get the redemption cards because they had those pre-rookie redemption for the drafts, and this one stung because I hit the number two pick. And you know how that '03 draft went. You had LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade. You had a good crop of rookies there. And unfortunately, I thought I was set great. I couldn't lose at number two. And Darko Milicic was drafted by the Detroit
I don't mean
Pistons.
to
And
laugh, but as soon as you said number
yeah,
two, I knew who the number two. I think a
yep,
lot of people know who the number two pick is, not for good reason.
right.
Obviously, like you said, I mean, even the third pick would have been better uh, than
Well,
than the two pick.
the thing is with the number two, there was talks that Carmelo, because he was up in Syracuse, won the championship and everything, people thought that Cleveland might pass on LeBron and take Carmelo
Yeah.
because of that, and then LeBron would go number two. Well, obviously neither happened, and but I thought I couldn't lose. I was either getting LeBron or Carmelo, and yeah. But so that was a very distinct point. And then I moved back here, and I'm from Virginia, so I moved back to Virginia in 2012, and I had a bad relationship, and so the collection I had built obviously went by the wayside, and so I'm on my third iteration because when I skipped the part there. When I moved to Indiana, obviously, like I said, I had gotten into Magic cards, and so I left all that stuff behind. I was 19 when I moved, halfway across the country. I was just learning life, learning how to become an adult. So um, this is my third go around, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't expect it to be where it is today. So, that's also a blessing, continue building on it. So, um,
Yeah, you're always drawn back in, right? There's
yep.
the draw it has on you. You know, you can, I always tell people you can always take a break, a pause, and come back when you're ready. Life happens, right? Like you said, you had
Yeah.
a bad relationship that took your attention away from it. You had to get that straightened out. You can always come back whenever you feel like the time is right. Nothing wrong with that. You don't have to. You didn't apologize, but you don't have to feel bad or apologize for anything like that. I get sometimes I'll get messages, Brandon, and someone would be like, "Hey, man, I'm feeling kind of burnt out. Any kind of advice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, take a break. Don't do anything." And I don't even. And sometimes they'll respond, "Well, how long of a break?" I'm like, "I can't answer. You have to answer that question. It could be 2 days, and you miss it. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 2 months. Maybe it's
Yeah.
even 2 years. That question you have to answer, but like take a break, get away from the cards, and when you feel like sometimes the old cliche, right? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. When you're away from it and you miss it, you know when you can come back. And so I always said nothing wrong with taking a break. I've done this for 40 years, and there's sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing anything card related this weekend, right? Whether it be content creation, looking at a card, picking up a card, I'm just kind of gonna take sort of a respite from it, if you will, retreat from it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It makes you,
Yeah.
sometimes if you don't do that, that's where you get in that space where like you sort of get burnt out or you start resenting it or hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not having fun. And so there's no wrong answer. I've told even people, Brandon, like, hey, try something different. If some way you're collecting is not moving your meter or it doesn't get you excited about it anymore, you're the CEO of your own hobby. You don't have to
I
ask permission. You can do whatever, pivot in different. Like you said, you had a stage where you did Magic the Gathering, and you came
Yep.
back to sport. Nothing wrong with that. That you're your own boss, so you can make those calls. And so, there's nothing wrong with that. And better that than to like get so upset or burnt out of hobby and you never come back. Period, and you're gone. Those
Yeah.
are I don't like to hear. Go ahead.
I actually I've had this conversation with folks because, like I said, this is my third iteration of building a collection, and during the pandemic, things were so wild and it was so easy, like especially if you were already in and you had inventory or whatever, it was so easy to make money. Like I had stuff sitting here that I never thought would be worth anything that people were paying 20, 30, $100 for, and it was like,
Yep.
take it, it's just sitting in a box, right? But I also realized that I was going in so many different directions that I allowed myself to get away from like, not necessarily who I am, but what I am most like, what is most enjoyable for me in the
Yep.
hobby. And so I didn't get out, but I kind of hit pause. I wasn't
Yep.
buying much, I was still
Yep.
keeping my finger on the pulse, but I was reevaluating like where was it that I was having the most fun? And I identified it pre-pandemic. Back in 2017, I started building a nationals collection. And that's a completely different story of how to get in there. But I went back to that, and when I was doing that, and I was like, that is where I was having a lot of fun. And so I haven't quit, but I've adjusted my collection to get it back niched into where that fun was for me instead of just being scatterbrained and thinking that I needed to buy everything and, this and that. So, I think as a collector, and people always talk about a true collector and this and all of that. And it's always coined, even in your little banner there, it says the hobby. There's no true definition of what the hobby is because
Yep.
the hobby is really what you as a person, you as a collector, you as a dealer enjoy.
Yep.
So, I think we all will evolve, will change, will take breaks, but I don't know that it'll ever go away, of being something that we enjoy.
I think most people, Brandon, let's see if you agree with this. I think most people have some sort of collecting gene, whether it's sports cards, maybe someone collects plates, someone collects watches, sneakers. I
Mhm.
think inherently as humans, there's things we're drawn to where we like to accumulate more than one of something, whatever that something is for each of us, right? For me and you, it's obviously cards and cardboard and chrome. For someone else, and it could be more than one thing. It could be more than one thing. I'm not really a sneakerhead, but I have like a wall where I line up all my sneakers in like boxes, and I'm like, man, I have way too many. Like that's ridiculous. So I don't. I wouldn't say I even collect sneakers. I haven't bought one in probably a pair in over a year, but I like having different options there, right? So I think we all have some sort of like collecting gene. Maybe sometimes we might not even realize it or not till after the fact. But I think we all have something along those lines.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can kind of just see in my background, it's a little eclectic. I mean, there's like Lego sets up on the shelves. There's
Yeah,
some VHS and stuff over here. Um, what else is back there? There's cards. There's some comics up on the shelf over there. So yeah, I mean, I know you were kind of interested in explaining the name. Where did I get the name Bobbles and Ball Cards? And I can actually
yep.
explain that now because it was a
Okay,
good
go ahead.
time.
Yep,
So when I was coming up with the channel, my channel name, it can be difficult sometimes. You want something unique, you want something fun, you want something that represents you. Well, in the term of collecting, me and my wife also collect bobbleheads. So my name is Brandon, hers is Becky, the B&B, and it worked to do the bobbles and ball cards. And she claims, most of the bobbleheads that she loves them. Our first minor league game that we went to as a family happened to be a bobblehead night, and she just fell in love with it. So we have almost all of the Nationals bobbleheads that have ever been released. So that's where the name came from. And a lot of people wonder because, ball cards isn't always the most common phrase. It's either sports cards or TCG or whatever, but it fit with our names being Brandon and Becky and then, collecting bobbleheads and sports cards. So,
I like it. It works. It's alliteration, right? This is a little English term for people who actually like school and paid attention in English class, right? Alliteration, and I love alliteration when you can incorporate it into whether it be a channel name, a business name, and it works, right? And it covers both things you collect, both aspects. Like you
mhm.
said, you and your wife's name both start would be. It just makes all it's a layup. You gotta, or it's a slam dunk. You gotta dunk
Yep.
it.
And for
So
5 years, we went with it. And it's kind of grown on everybody. And even if people don't know my name or hers, it's Mr. and Mrs. Bobbles. We
Yeah,
actually, a friend of ours, like they seen how the channel was and how our Facebook group and the great they had heard all the stories and everything. They seen our bobblehead collection and they actually got a custom, and it's really well done, a custom bobblehead of me and her, and it says Mr. and Mrs. Bobbles on it. So
that's that's really cool. I had a fan of the show. Speaking of Bibles, now I'll just take a minute here. A fan of the show. I've told this story before, Brandon, but I'll give the Cliff Notes version. For a fan of the show, the show's been on now, going on its seventh year. About 3 or 4 years in, a gentleman emails me and says, "Hey, I need a headshot of you." Doesn't tell me why. He goes, "I know this is going to sound creepy. I need a headshot of you. And, you know, trust me, I'm not a creeper, And so I'm like, I don't know, do I send one? Well, he said, "I'm a fan of the show. I need a headshot for you. I'm doing something. Believe me, it's not anything weird. I know this is a weird email, but just go with me on this." So I went ahead and sent him a headshot. And he said, "Hey, you'll send me your address. You're going to get something in about 4 weeks, about a month." And I'm like, "Okay." I didn't know, is he like a painter? Is he painting a picture? He didn't go into details. And about a month later, sure enough, this shows up with a nice note and letter. Like, "I love the show. You keep it real. You're a must listen in my rotation." And so he too had a
Yeah.
custom bobblehead of me. So there's my Hobby Quick Hits, is another show where it's just me talking, no guests. So that's the hat. There's the Sports Card Nation logo on the shirt. And he even asked, and not in that first email, he's like, "Give me a picture of your favorite sneakers at the time." And so these are Nike Air Maxes, and it's even like to the sneakers.
Yep.
And there's my other logo. And when I got this, I'm like, "Holy crap!" And I obviously I thanked them and that sort of thing. But like, it's crazy. I've gotten a bat. There's a bat behind me. I won't take. It's right near the lighted sign. A fan of the show. That was for my first anniversary of the show. They made a custom bat in Cooperstown, and again, they just asked for my address and said, "Hey, look for something in the mail." And so I'll get stuff like that. Now, obviously, Brandon, I don't do the show for those kind of reasons, but people like the show and appreciate. Like, every time it happens, like, I'm still humbled and shocked and surprised
Yeah.
by it. And
I
so it's cool. But go ahead, go ahead.
I'll tell you, you mentioned like I had watched YouTube and stuff, and you would see like people do, oh, fan mail and all this, and I was like, man, people go to that effort. And when I started my channel, I never expected anything from it. Like
Yeah,
I just was on there, honestly, just it started off, I was opening just packs and just kind of having fun recording it. They were awkward videos, trust me. But I will never forget, and I have every letter that's ever been sent to me, any card that's been given to me. I'll never forget the first time I got fan mail, if you want to call it that. It was a teenager, and his name was Connor. And I'll never, his Instagram was Collecting with Connor. And like that, I just never imagined it. And I never imagined that a young person would take the interest of like watching or listening or whatever of what I had to say. And so, that was really cool. And then obviously, 5 years in, there's been a lot of letters and appreciations and all that stuff. And it, like you said, humbling is
yep,
I'll tell you, the first time somebody see me at a show, I I had to like go back later and find them and say and apologize because I was awkward. I didn't never expect anybody to come up to me, recognize me, and I didn't know how to react. So I went and apologized to them. Hey, sorry, I just wasn't expecting it. So, but
yeah,
yeah,
no doubt. It's a great point you make, because I get the mail too, or the notes like, love the show. I love that you don't curse on the show. I can listen with my kids who also collect, and I got an accordion file. It's over there in my bookcase there, Brandon, with all those letters and
Yep.
notes, and I keep every one in the 7 years, and it's not to sound cocky. There's quite a bit of them, but I keep my thing is, if someone took time out of their day to write that and then send it and buy a stamp and put a stamp and then mail it to me, like, I'm going to keep it. And then, we all have those hobby days, right? Where maybe we're feeling a little low or feeling a little down, or even with the show, maybe the show is getting into that little grind. I'll go into that accordion file, open it up, and pull some of those things out and read them. And just as a
Yep.
reminder, like, people care. People like the show. People enjoy what you do, and it's just another kind of a way to reset and kind of realize, like, I don't like even missing episodes. I think in 7 years I missed 5 episodes, whether it be sick or traveling or whatnot. And that's the thing. The rare occasion when I miss one, I'll get 5 or 6 or 7. Like, everything okay? Because it's almost like that newspaper on your doorstep. People kind of expect it, and when it's not in there, like, podcast platform, if you will, they're like, "Is everything all right?" And that tells you, right, that you mean something to them. So, like you said, when I started this almost 7 years ago, I had no expectations. I didn't know how many people would listen. I didn't know how it would be received. And it obviously didn't start out like that. It just built to the crescendo, and you built up that following. And it never gets, I never get complacent with it. I never, like, I'm still amazed even 7 years in. I'm not like, like, someone once said, you're a celebrity, and I'm like, I'm not a celebrity, Jimmy. I'm like, until I go, the only time I'll be a celebrity is if I ever go to my, like, supermarket shopping and someone says, "Oh my God, it's John Newman." That's a celebrity. Brad Pitt's a celebrity. Maybe I'm a hobby known, if I can go that far, but I'm not a celebrity. And even if I was, like, I don't really like. That's one of the biggest compliments someone will tell me is, like, when you tell stories, it's just you telling the story. It's not even like you tell bad one, like something like negative happened to you or something positive. Like, you keep it real, and I appreciate that. It's not always W's all the time, right? It's
Oh,
real
definitely.
easy. Like, yeah, I bought a car for $10 and sold it for 100, and that guy, that every story he hits a home run, right? I talk about the strikeouts or the swings and misses, and people appreciate that. I think it's important to know, for people to know, like, hey, you're not gonna bat 1,000. That's okay. That comes with the territory.
Yep.
And the content I listen to, I appreciate the folks that are the same way. That, like, hey man, I made a mistake. Hey, I thought this, and then this happened, and that sort of thing. It means we're human. We don't know everything, and I've been in the hobby 40 years, Brandon, and I learn something every day. I don't know everything. I may be, someone sometimes when I'm on another show, they'll introduce me as, like, hobby expert John Newman. I always, like, kind of smile because I don't feel like I'm an expert. I'm experienced. I have a lot of experience, but I don't believe anyone's an expert. It's kind of what I say about golfers. I don't think anyone's really good at golf. I just think some tournaments they play really well and they win. I kind of think like that with hobbyists, right? So we're just more experienced. It doesn't mean we're experts, and um, so I always kind of bristle at that. But I mean, they're being nice, and I appreciate that. But I learn something every day. And the minute I don't learn something every day, I'm just not paying attention that day. And so, you know, I try to stay humble. I think I do most more days than I don't, and I think it's a good place to be. And going international, I'm very approachable. Heck, my cell phone number's on most of my content. If anyone ever wants to call or text or has a question, I try to be available, and people were available to me when I was a young kid getting in the hobby and helped me, and I sort of just try to pay that whole thing forward even now into my 50s here. And so that's just the way I was raised and brought up, and I'm not going to change now just because a bunch of people listen to the podcast, which I appreciate immensely. I'm not, but it doesn't change who I am, and there's no shtick. I might use funny sound bites or something like that, but it's always being myself, and I think people appreciate it. I'm sure you're the same way. So I think it goes a long way, and
Yeah,
people
definitely.
appreciate that. Yeah, go
You
ahead.
know, just like you said, it's not always wins. One thing, I think most content creators have realized, if you're doing it and become, I don't want to say popular, but known around the space or whatever. We talked about all the people that are appreciative and everything, and it doesn't matter how real you are, it doesn't matter how honest you are. There's always going to be haters,
Yep.
and I realized that
Yep.
as well. You can be honest, true.
Well, listen, not to cut you off. Some people are just, and it's not fair, but we both know this, and people out there listening, I'm sure, will shake their head. Some people will just look at you and make a judgment.
Oh
You
yeah,
don't have to say nothing, do anything. They're going to look at the cover, so to speak, and judge the book. And they haven't read the book yet. And they're just going to
right.
look at you. And there's nothing you can do. And I don't worry, and this will sound harsh, but I don't worry about those kind of people because there's nothing I can do anyway. The verdict is in without a trial, right?
Yep.
They've already looked at you and decided I don't like that guy or I do like that guy.
I've always felt it takes way less effort to just be who you are as a person, living your life who you want to be, than it is to try to be something else to please other people. And if you make the decision to just be yourself, and I've always had this mindset, you're either going to like me or you don't. And that's not my
Yep,
decision to make, that's yours. And
yep,
you're free will to make the whatever decision you choose. And that's just how I've always been. And you know, you're going to have a handful of people that like you, and you're going to have a few people that don't like you, and that's just the balance of the world and just human nature. So I don't worry about it. I'm going to
yeah.
be
You
who I
can't.
am and just
Yep,
tell it like it is. So no
yep,
sense in sugarcoating it.
yep. Well
So,
said, and that's a good way to be, right? My grandfather said I was raised by my grandparents, Brandon, and my
I
grandfather told me something when I was real young, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. He said, Johnny, um, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember
yep,
the lie.
yep,
And at the time, I'm a little kid. I got it, but I didn't get it as much as when I got older, right? And even that even applies to content as far as I'm concerned. If I just when I turn the mic on, whether I'm interviewing or talking to somebody, or I'm just doing a show and it's just me, and I just tell the truth and be honest, I don't have to remember the story because the story is comes from in here and it's what's real. And so maybe when I get older and dementia maybe sets in, I might not remember. But if you're honest and sincere, you don't have to remember what you say because you said it because you really feel that way. And it's not an act. You're not playing a role or the script. And that's the way I've always been. And, it was kind of instilled at me at a very young age. And so I've always tried to be like that. And like you said, if someone appreciates that and says, "Hey, I like Newman because he kind of," I've had people tell me some of it. We talk about fan mail or feedback. I've had people tell me like, "John, I don't agree with this one point you were making about this topic, but I still love you because like that's how you feel. That's your true opinion. Like we may not agree on everything and some things not, but I know like you're not just saying it to get clicks or just to grab attention or just play yin to someone's yang. You're just being yourself and giving your true opinion. And sometimes I agree with you, sometimes I don't, but I still like you. Even when I don't agree with you, I like you because I just know you're keeping it real, even though
Yeah.
we might get off at a different exit on that particular topic or opinion. And that's one of the best compliments when someone can say, "Hey, I don't agree with you, but I still respect you and your opinion."
Well,
That's one of the biggest compliments you can get.
that's a big issue within the hobby, especially in content space, because it's almost like this need for everybody to be right and their way to be the right way. But the thing that I think people forget is we're literally doing something that is supposed to be a hobby, and we're supposed to be able to do it our way. And on top of that, most people are doing it within sports, which we all don't root for the same team. We all don't have the same favorite players. We all don't like the same brand or wear the same shoes or, whatever. We all do things differently. So why can't it be that and I still remember, and I know we're going to get into SGC, but I
Yep.
still remember when I started doing SGC and the hounding and the trolls and the you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, this is what I like. This is what's working for me. This is what I'm doing. Why does it matter to you? Like that was the whole thing. It was like,
Yep.
if it's working for me and this is what I enjoy and what I'm doing, why do you care? Like, so, and that happens a lot, not just within grading, but
Well, that happens. Listen, it's a symptom of society too. It happens in politics. It happens in
I
any
try to stay out
any
of
niche.
that. I'm not
Yeah,
a
no, we
political
won't go
person.
there. But I'm saying it's not even just relegated to the hobby. It's really almost in anything. Like everyone wants to be right, and everyone else has to be wrong if you don't agree with them. And it doesn't have to be like that, like you just said, Brandon. And so it's a good segue, though. Let's get into SGC. Let's get deep, sort of into the woods here. We both shared a commonality. We both were bulk subbers for SGC up until June 11th, and on the same day. And I know we've obviously talked before recording this. We both received a call from our reps on June 11th, letting us know that the bulk rates for SGC were going away on June 20th, which is over and done with now at the time of this recording. And we both talked like it was a disappointing call to not only receive, but both of our reps were very, they were just the messenger, and we're not happy to make the call. We've seen other people's content, right, sort of say, the end is near for SGC. Nat Turner was just on with Leighton Shelton on, Sports Card Therapy, I think he calls his show. I know Leighton, so he'll forgive me if I got that wrong. But Nat went on there and said, "Hey, we're not killing SGC." It wasn't. I think we both can agree. Wasn't enthusiastic, let's say, or how do you want to word it? Like it wasn't. I wasn't over the top convincing, but he did go on uh, a show and say, "Hey, we're doing some different stuff, but we're not killing the brand SGC. We like SGC. We've brought some people over from SGC that wanted to come over to PSA, so that came out, which was sort of alleged until kind of Nat confirmed it. Like you, I'm a huge fan of the brand and what they do. I don't want to see SGC go away. I know getting ahead, and I'll let you. I'm kind of rambling on here. I'm going to continue to do the bulk subbing. Obviously, I've got to adjust prices to higher than I'd like to, but you have to. That's just, either do it or you don't, and not do it. That's what you've decided to do, and I get that, and I understand that. Just kind of your thoughts on. It's funny because when I heard the content now about 6 weeks ago, saying like SGC is going to be phased out, I'm like, this is crazy. And then that phone call came, and I'm not predicting this either, but I was less convinced after the phone call than before the phone call. Kind of your thoughts on state of SGC and where your mindset is. Kind of like I just talked about mine.
So the conversation or the piece that was shared with Nat Turner, it went back to something that I had told my rep when he called. And I asked him, and he's always been really straightforward with me. I never have had a reason to question what he's telling me. But I asked him, I said, is this a step in the direction of collectors, abolishing the brand or whatever? And he said, I'm confident that that isn't the case. And I said, well, do you not feel like that this is a step in the direction, maybe not forcefully shutting the company down, but moving it in a negative direction? And it's actually sad. As someone that's been there and seen the growth and everything, when I started bulk submitting with them, they had 4 employees. 4. And you can comprehend that, a grading company with 4 employees. To see where they are today and then know that, okay, Nat says, we love SGC, they're not going away, but PSA has an issue. And we're going to take staffing away from the brand that has had great momentum. They have a lot of support. They've grown. They've had awesome turnaround times, awesome pricing. They've went from nobody wanting to buy their slabs at shows to now slabs being in like all the dealer showcases. But we need help at
Big
PSA.
record. Listen, not to cut you off. We've seen record-setting auctions beat with
Yeah.
cards in SGC holders for sure, no doubt.
So the solution is, because PSA has a problem, we're going to take away from SGC. And my first thought was, okay, I could understand if SGC was struggling getting cards or whatever. All right, let's adjust. But SGC currently has a backlog, and you're going to take away during the backlog, which then immediately tells me we're not worried about those 5 to 10 day turnaround times, which was a huge selling point for people submitting to SGC. Our solution to this is we're going to cut, and Nat says it right in that little clip, we're going to cut the dealer bulk submission, bulk rate discount to help support the demand coming into SGC. Now, you can kind of read between the lines here. We're not shutting SGC down. We're not getting rid of the brand. But we also really aren't worried about whether or not they get a lot of cards. We're not worried
Yeah.
about the direction. And there's some people with this take, I heard Dustin in his video say it, and I actually messaged him about this. And this theory, this statement has been out there. You have people that submit to PSA that don't like SGC, and you have people with SGC that submit to them that don't like PSA. So if you shut SGC down, that doesn't mean that PSA gets all the business. However, there's also been the statement since the acquisition and the fear by the SGC folks, and there's been discussions, will they turn into operating like PSA? You start making these moves and you see these negative impacts that they're now doing. It's no longer 2 separate companies when they start operating like one, or you see one getting tugged on to help the other one, and the users over here are the ones suffering from it. That's going to put the bad taste in the SGC crowd, and they're not going to go to PSA. They're going to go elsewhere. We just came out of Fanatics Fest, and there was some pretty big buzz, some sales. I don't know if it'll help them at all, but Beckett got a couple spotlights on a couple sales. I mean, they're a well-known brand in the space as well. CGC, I think, was set up at Fanatics Fest. They're
Yeah.
pretty cheap. They have everything that if they could put one foot in front of the other, they could take off. And so it's not basically saying we're not going to close SGC, but we're not really worried about affecting the SGC customer base. That's the takeaway I got from it. I also am worried because we don't know what graders they took. Did
Yeah,
they take the experience for PSA, and what is that going to do, or how will that affect the SGC grading?
yeah, that's a
So,
great point. It's a bunch of great points, not just one, but that last one too. Like, if you take the best graders, right? It's like taking the best players off a team, right?
right,
What's left? What's left for the team? They're probably not going to be as good. They're not going to be competing. They're not going to be winning as many games. Using a sports analogy, it's a great point. And and hearing you say that, right, and thinking about what Nat said, yeah, I agree with you. Like, on one hand, he's like, "Hey, we love SGC, but we don't love them enough to really like full heartedly support them. Like,
right.
we're gonna take care of like our own house first, almost at the expense of the SGC brand."
Yeah,
And
we're gonna.
that's, like you said, that's worrisome.
Yeah, I don't want to say this in a gruesome way, but kind of the way I like when I was talking to my wife about it. We're not killing SGC. We're just going to critically wound them.
Yeah, they're going to be in the hospital for a bit. It's
Yeah,
going to be touching, and at times it might be touch and go. Here's the thing. I think, and I said this even uh, before this happened, Brandon. I said, man, when we were pretty spoiled and getting those 5 to 10 day turnarounds, as you well know, as a bulk submitter, and I well knew, people were shocked on my like the orders back already. Like, yeah, it's back. I had one that was I sent it on Monday, and it was back here on the following Wednesday or Thursday of the next week. Insane and
hmm
unheard of with any brand. Like, even the little guys who don't get as many cards, and people got spoiled by that. And this was obviously after the acquisition. And I remember thinking quietly right in this office, like, man, if I'm PSA, I'm like, here's our little brother. Our parent company just bought them. So they're under us, and they're outshining us at a lesser price level. Like, it makes us look bad. And I said to myself, like, what are they going to do something to, whether it's them getting faster, or are they going to do something to make SGC slower so they don't look as bad? And I think we have our answer now. PSA isn't really getting any faster, so it's not the former, it's the latter of what I just said. Unfortunately, for us, and this isn't coming from a bias point of view, but getting rid of the bulk sub rates, right? You didn't necessarily have to do that. You know what I mean? They could have left that and just had the turnaround times be sort of what they are. Like, why? It's almost like they don't want as many cards
right.
going
Yeah,
to SGC.
yeah. It's
Um,
where you. I don't know if you were because I know I've subbed a bit longer than you on the bulk sub.
yeah, yes,
I
you
don't
have.
know if
Yep.
you were doing it when they raised it to $50 a card, back when they were like 2 month turnaround time or 3 month, whatever it
Yeah,
was.
I've done it for now for about 27, 28 months.
Okay.
Um,
This was early 2021.
yeah, yeah. No, I
And
hadn't done. I was a subber, but I wasn't a bulk subber.
so I
Yeah.
get a call one day from my rep, and he calls to tell me that, and they had been like tweaking prices, here and there, and trying to find a comfort zone because the pandemic and everything, it was kind of crazy. And then I get a call, and he says we got to raise the price to $50 a card. And as soon as he said it, I said, I'm done. I'm like, there was no thought because in my
Yeah,
mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm telling my people $50 a
yeah,
card. Like, there's no chance. And so Pete calls me and he explains it to me. He's like, we're just trying to get things under control. We're way behind. I'm like, all right, understandable, but this is crazy. $50. I'm not doing that. Let me know when you guys are gonna adjust the price back, and I'll start back up. And I did, but it feels almost it's not quite as extreme, but it's like this feels like a price change without actually changing the price because they know the submitters that stay doing it have to be above their level. But here's the part that doesn't make as much sense, okay? You're saying that you're taking away the bulk discount to try to control the volume, but people can still send themselves and get the $15 rate. Now, most people are aware that one of the biggest benefits and one of the reasons that they give bulk discounts is because it's more efficient to do one large order than it is 100 smaller orders.
yeah.
So, what if this doesn't change? It might affect the volume a little, but what if it doesn't actually overall change the volume? Well, now you're getting the same amount of volume. You're going to take longer because you can't process them as quickly, and you have less staff. Then what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, here that's a great point. I don't. We're about to find out. It appears, Brandon. To be honest with you, let me ask you this. Let me throw this out there and see your thoughts on it. There's a prevailing thought, or there's a theory. I don't want to say a prevailing. There's a theory that PSA doesn't really want to kill SGC, but they want SGC just to be known as a vintage grading brand, where PSA becomes more of a modern, ultra modern, and vintage too. They're not turning away vintage, but make just SGC, which has always kind of been how SGC's been labeled. Although that started to change recently, so maybe
Mm-hmm.
they sort of wanted to revert back to that. What do you think about that theory, if you will?
Well, I was trying to pull gem rate up here real quick to see. Um, I thought they gave a breakdown of years.
I think they do that once, like they come out with different reports, so it's not always
Yeah,
you
I
have
don't
to
see
have.
it on the May
Yeah,
report there, right on their thing. But okay, so my my question goes back to, and this is the most disappointing part. Why crush the effort? Why crush the momentum? Why crush the growth? Why crush the support of the past 5 years? SGC has they're only sports cards. Like they get very little TCG. The backlog of a company like PSA and CGC is being driven by the TCG market. So why make these changes to crush the momentum of a company or attempt to throttle the intake, which okay, let's say that works. Let's say they do get less cards and you're processing a few more over here. I mean, how many I don't know how many graders SGC had on hand or how many was taken, but you have to think like what is the balance going to be? Is it going to make any sense? And on the terms of just a vintage grader, well, yes, I've been adamant that more and more collections will be found, more and more raw vintage cards will be found, but that spigot also will trickle and become less and less. So how long is that going to keep them afloat? They talk about, well, Beckett does what, 50,000 or whatever they do a month. Is SGC going to get 20,000 vintage cards a month? I mean, and your every move that you make like this, you're adding more questions. You're adding more concerns for the people that support the company. You know, I have been heavily vocal. I have been heavily supportive of SGC. Like I said, when I started using them, they have 4 employees. There's probably other people that's been there way longer than I have that have been using them. But you have to start questioning what is the moves they're going to make? What is the purpose? How long will this survive? And I think Nat is trying to protect his image and his brand. And also, it doesn't make sense to kill the company with momentum. But at the same time, I think he also knows it's easier to let it fade out than to just shut it down. Even if you're making 100 grand a month, that's better than zero. So just keep letting it trickle, right? So
Here's the thing, though, and I agree with you. But even doing that, so even like doing that, whether they do that or an announcement comes a week later from the show and says, SGC, we're going to shut SGC down. It's been a great run, but it was a business decision. However they word it, right? It doesn't make any sense because here's why. Because for people who love SGC, like me or you, and many others for that matter, right? People submit to SGC because they don't want to submit to PSA. So now you take them off the board, you take that piece off the board. Those people aren't going to sub to PSA. They're going to now go to CGC, Beckett, and other grading companies. You've actually fed and helped your competition by the decisions you made. Listen, CGC is number 2 when you add in TCG. I'm not a TCG guy. So to me, SGC is number 2 in sports cards. But these decisions, right? These decisions are going to open that door. CGC's got some momentum. You mentioned Beckett at Fanatics Fest got a little bump, right? You may not even own the number 2 sports card company anymore. You might own the 1 and the 3 or the 1 and the 4. And why not want to keep the 1 and 2, right? If you're Burger King and you own McDonald's and you can keep both in play, and why not try to do things to do that rather than make a decision where now Wendy's slides up to number 2 and McDonald's goes to 3 or 4, and I think there's ways to do. I think and again, they're smart people there. I'm not calling them dumb. I don't think that's fair, but there's ways to do some things and still maybe accomplish what you're trying to do, and sort of stiff arming the competition. I think this helps the competition. Which I if you're a business, why would you want to do that? Unless, maybe they are trying to get rid of SGC, which, God, man, I hope that's not the case.
So it's kind of like this scenario where no matter how you look at it, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because PSA, to my understanding, as of a couple weeks ago, had a 4 million card backlog. Okay. So you take away a few graders from SGC to try to help this. Well, I don't know how much of a dent that they're going to really do when SGC as a whole is only doing what, maybe 120-ish, let's call it 150 tops a month, 150,000. That's not putting a big dent. Let's say they take a third of them away and they can push through 100,000. That's not a big dent in 4 million. On the flip side, if you're trying to take demand away from SGC and you're hoping it comes to PSA, well, then you're just increasing your demand even higher over there. Now, to your point about maybe keeping them floating because of the vintage, they have an advantage there versus Beckett and CGC because you really don't see a lot of vintage. Like BVG Beckett vintage has like never really been a thing.
No.
And CGC, you see some here and there pop up, but it's really not vintagey as well. So they have a bit of a benefit there, and I think they could sustain. But the real question is what is the volume of vintage that's going to come through the door each month? And you have to keep like I know like I've read comments on some different videos. There's been comments on some of my videos, people think that this is all just about a conversation of the world's ending and it's a bunch of drama, and that's not necessarily the case. I'm trying to look at it a more realistic picture, and as submitters, both of us sitting here, we talk to a lot of people that are submitting cards and that have had questions. Many of them have been big support. Many of them have moved from using a different company to SGC, and now there's questions. So it's not just us sitting here. I'm perfectly fine with, okay, if SGC doesn't, it would, if they get shut down, it would suck. But I would just go to another company and
Yep.
continue on as normal. It's not that the world is falling, it's that there is a lot of questions that people are having, and you have to have these questions because the further it goes along, the turnaround time. We both know that was a huge incentive for people to use SGC.
Yep.
If it's going to take 2+ months, what benefit do you have then? Outside
Yep.
if you like the tuxedo, or you're flipping them, they hold a better market than some of the other companies, but you've taken that advantage away.
Yep.
So you have to hope that there is enough true SGC support there from the collectors that want to spend the money to have their cards encapsulated and that won't mind it taking a little while longer, the
Yep.
2, 3 months, whatever it gets to, because every time PSA or Collectors Universe makes a move like this, this is the key point here. I love SGC. I don't want them to go away. I don't think that they would shut them down. But every time that a move is made that is negatively impacting the company and the volume starts to diminish, you're taking the relevancy, you're devaluing the brand.
Yep.
SGC cards didn't sell worth a crap 5 years ago. Nobody wanted to buy them. If you start chinking that armor and dropping it back down the scale, you are then devaluing the brand that worked so hard to put itself in that number 2 position. The
Yeah.
values
And
will
here,
drop.
yep, I don't disagree. And here's the other. Let's just put the cart ahead of the horse. Let's say PSA or collectors, I should say, decides to do away with SGC, and I know we both hope that's not what happens. But let's just say it does. That's what we do in the hobby. Sometimes we speculate. That's gonna hurt PSA because that's just gonna open up the door for CDC, Beckett, who knows who else, maybe even a new company to move up. Like that's not. I don't think that's going to help PSA. And I really don't. And so I get they want to try to help themselves, but if closing SGC is not the answer, I don't think.
Well,
Again, but
I think
well,
so.
go ahead.
A lot of people don't even like recognize the history of the grading companies, and they look at CGC as being a new company.
No, they've been
They
around.
actually used to own SGC.
Yep, yep,
SGC was under Certified Collectible Group, who owns CGC. So they've been in the card game dating back to the early 90s. They abolished SGC, and that's when Dave Foreman took over the company and created it as new SGC.
Yeah.
So CGC is not, you know, they're not a new kid on the block. They have Beckett employees that came over. Andy Broom helped start
Yeah.
up the when it was CSG.
Yeah.
So there's experience there. They have a nice holder. They're the cheapest of the four main companies to grade with. Their turnaround time isn't great. They came out of the blocks like people were submitting a ton to them that actually hurt them a little bit because they got behind. And then that green ugly label, they changed the grading scale, and then they just kind of lost momentum. But I don't think it would be that hard for them or Beckett if they see an opening, if they see an opportunity, and if the hand is forced for other people to go elsewhere, it wouldn't take much to bump some of them back up. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like they're new kids. They're not new graders. There is a lot of history and experience there. I'll tell you, I've sent stuff to CGC because there's stuff they can do that SGC can't. They can slab like up to 360 point cards.
Yeah.
SGC can't. So I've sent
Yeah.
stuff to them just for that. They have JSA. That's
Yeah.
another positive on their belt, you know. SGC doesn't have autograph grading. They also have Blackstone, a massive financial, you know, they have money that
Yeah.
that can be they're worldwide. They just I think opened a shop or a facility in Dubai, I believe. They're worldwide. So
Well, I have
they're
Blackstone too, Brandon, and I love cooking on it, but that's another story
but
for
no, I mean I
yeah, no, you're
my
right.
true
You're right.
inside
Well,
feeling is SGC isn't going away. I don't think that. But it's still, I think the reason that I point out all of this is it really sucks being there when they were the little kid. You know, they were the little guy. They weren't, you know, people,
yeah,
oh, the tuxedo's ugly. Ah, SGC sucks, blah, blah, blah. And experiencing the growth and seeing all of the people change their mind, you know, seeing the dealers at shows actually using SGC,
yeah,
seeing all of the submitters. I mean, there is how many bulk submitters now? I don't even know.
yeah.
Like there's shops and everything. Seeing all of that to know that they're basically intentionally trying to turn the table to an opposite route. I think it's disheartening for me to see that. It's sad. You know, you mentioned that I made the decision to
I'd
go with
almost here's the thing, and we're kind of coming down the home stretch here, Brandon. If their intent is to phase out SGC or close SGC, I rather see them sell them to someone else.
let Dave have them back.
You know what I mean?
You
Sell them,
know?
yeah. Let that or wherever. Let sell them to another entity that's going to keep them around rather than just phase them out. I rather see that. Just real quick, kind of wrapping up the episode, and I'd love to have you back, and so let's put our tinfoil hats. I'm gonna let you. I just did an episode of Hobby Quick Hits where I talked about it. What do you think? You know, however far ahead you want to go, what do you think ultimately happens? You know, it's all speculation. Obviously, we don't know with certainty. But if you had to guess, where do you think this winds up?
All right. So trying to be Nostradamus and predict the future. A year from now. Okay. Well, we'll go end of May. So June 1st, 2026. SGC, I think, will still be in business. But they did 145,000 cards in May of 2025. I'm going to say maybe 50,000 for May of 2026.
So one third of the company in a sense of what
Yeah.
they are to
But
around.
I'm not even worried about the volume or the demand. If they truly are taking like staff away, that's going to immediately lower the capacity that they're able to do. So I'm not even like looking at it on a scale of, oh, people is going to stop sending. If the plan is to take people, they're not going to be able to do as much. It's simple math. So I'm going to say they're still in business. I do think the demand will fall a little bit, but just by sheer number of, PSA taking away, staff, uh, the capacity will drop. And so I'm going to say maybe 50,000.
Yeah, I won't argue that. Right, that should it makes sense. You explain how you think that happens, and I don't disagree with you. Let me ask you one last question before we sort of wrap up. Do you think they want that to happen like that, or even worse, and then they can say, "Listen, SGC is not financially viable for us anymore. We're actually sort of almost losing money or not making money with that brand now," and so it's that decision. That's the reason we didn't want to close them, but it's like any business. If they're not making you a profit or they're not keeping you in the black and they're starting to be in the red, then we have to make a business decision. You think they're trying to look like the good guy when they close SGC rather than just be the bad guy and say we're closing? You think there's sort of that in play?
I really can't answer that question because I don't know what the number would need to be to make it
Yep.
financially make sense because we don't know what they purchased them for. We don't know what the operation costs are. Obviously, again, if they're taking staff away, your business costs are lowering. I would assume that if some of this is to help PSA, they might, SGC just moved into that larger office space there. They might be planning to flip them back to where, they have the smaller space and PSA goes into the bigger space. I don't really know any of those kind of plans.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense to me if you're trying to create more volume or more capacity to help PSA out, give them the space to be able to do it. But I don't know what the scenario is going to hold there. Um, I mean, Beckett is still operating, and what did they do in May? 59. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would have to just it would depend on what like how many they're getting. If it's enough that like they're barely surviving, like if they're doing less than tag, you know,
Yeah.
and not throwing shade out there, but if they're doing less than a company like Tag or something, then yeah, you might want to consider shutting the doors.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know what their op costs are. I don't know what the purchase price was when the sale happened. And obviously Nat, he has to be a smart guy. He's making moves that I guess he feels is best. Uh, whether he truly believes this decision is the best for both companies, that part I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's a one-way street right now,
Yeah.
just by the way that was explained. Um, So, I don't think he would just let them continue on just to be nice to the hobby.
Yeah.
But I also don't know what the number would be to
Yeah.
to make it, you know, maintain. I'm gonna just stick with my tinfoil of they're still gonna be around in
Yeah.
2026 and they're gonna be pushing somewhere in the vicinity of 50,000.
Yeah, well, listen, I think we can both end with the agreement. I think the next 3 to 6 months, and uh, and the gem rate report, and seeing how this decision's being received by the collectors, by the hobbyists, across the board. Right, it's going to be an interesting next 3 to 6 months. I think what happens in the next 3 to 6 months will set the tone for what will
Mhm.
happen in the next year, and obviously past that. And I'm
And
sure you agree with that.
I know that the company, we've discussed. I know they're a supporter of your podcast and everything,
Yeah,
and I don't
for the
know if
moment, for the moment.
well, I want to make something clear because if they do listen, they obviously have been great to me and my wife and everybody that has submitted. Um, they even went as far as making a custom label and submitting free submissions for a young boy that was battling cancer. Um, Many people know him, Mason Forelli. He wound up losing his battle, but we were blessed enough to get to know Mason and his dad a bit and help them. We were the ones who submitted the cards for Mason and got all that done through the help of Refractor Jones. Um, I just want to say Pete and my rep Brian, um, Andy Raffa, who was my rep when I started, and he's now with JSA. Like all of the people I've ever dealt with the company, they have
Yeah,
been absolutely amazing. And I do want to reiterate, this isn't, you know, it's not being negative Nancy or Debbie Downer, the sky is falling or anything
no,
else. It
we have
just
to.
sucks.
Yeah,
It sucks seeing Pete take that role and being so passionate and building that company to something people said it couldn't be and know that the likelihood is it's going to just make a U-turn. And I kind of feel bad for him because
yeah,
he didn't do everything he promised us. He didn't give us the podcast. He didn't, the app, it got around to it. We never got a set right. He never updated the label, but he did give the collectors and the ones who supported SGC great service, awesome turnaround time, you know, for the most part, very consistent, fair, accurate grading, um, and price points that were usually really good. And so if they listen, I just want to make sure all of them, everybody within the company, um,
yeah,
I've appreciated you guys. There's no hate, no bad blood. For me, the only reason I bowed out was I've never since the start charged more than the
yeah,
company themselves charged. And
yeah,
um, I mostly did it just to help the folks out. And I've had people message and say, "Hey, I'll pay more," and it's not something I want to do. I don't want to feel like I'm making people pay. Especially with the economy and finances and everything else. I it's cheaper for them to do it on their own. So
yeah, yeah,
that's the only reason I made the decision. So,
yeah.
but
Well said. I echo that sentiment. What you said about the staff and the people at SGC. It's a great point, and let's hope. Hey, let's hope this is maybe just a blip on the radar. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I have a gut feeling, but I sometimes my gut feelings can be wrong too, Brandon. So maybe I'm sort of hoping my gut feelings wrong. Again, my relationship with SGC has always been a good one. The people have been great to me. They've always answered my questions and responded back. Come on the show, blah blah blah. I have nothing negative to say there, and I hope that that continues and they continue, and I'll leave it at that. But I appreciate. Listen, number one, I appreciate your candor and your candidness. That's how I try to be. Even like you said, they're a sponsor of the show, but even when they sponsored the started, I said, "Listen, I'm going to give my opinion. People are going to
oh
come on
yeah,
the show. People are going to come on the show and give their opinion that may not always align with you. I keep it real." And they're like, "John, we want you to be like that. We can't tell your guests what to
yep,
say or not to say. So you do you." And they've always been supportive, even on that. So I
yep,
appreciate you being the same way, and we think very similar. Let me just put it that way. But more about you here, kind of wrapping it up here. I always give the guests last word, where people can find you on YouTube, any social, anything you want to share where people can see what Bobbles and Ball Cards is doing. Take it
yeah.
back.
I have two YouTube channels. I don't put out like any kind of schedule of I kind of, if something, like if I want to get a wild hair and do a video or something, I do it. But Bobbles and Ball Cards is the card channel. The other channel I haven't done a video in a while, but Instagram, Bobbles and Ball Cards, and then we do have a Facebook group. That's been the place where the group submissions happened, where all the information was relayed and everything else. It's also Bobbles and Ball Cards on there. So
Well, Brandon, thank you. We'll do this again. Maybe not a whole year, but we'll revisit, and maybe we'll revisit also again in a year and kind of look at how close
see
your Nostradamus prediction was.
yeah,
Yeah. So, well, thanks, Brandon. Take care.
thank you.